Good afternoon. Whoops. Good afternoon, everybody. Zoom changed the interface a little bit there on me. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. So today we are doing our new partner introduction. This is a webinar that we do every month, where we sort of go over a little background on who Zysel is and hit some of our key product categories, and give you a few little ideas of what you can use them for, the applications we have. This came about because we have a lot of new partners that join us and they're maybe familiar with one of our products or two of our products, but aren't familiar with the whole line. So we put this together for you, just to help give you an idea of what's going on. So it's great if you're a new partner, or if you're a new employee at an existing partner, or if you're just sort of looking for a refresh on what it is we have and some of the product offerings that we have. So to start with here, a little background on Zysel. We've been making computer networking equipment for well over 30 years now. We started way back in 1989. Um, we serve 150 different global markets. We have over 100 million devices deployed out in the field. Our US headquarters is based out of Anaheim, California, not too far from Disneyland. And that is our warehouse. That is our sales and marketing. And that is also our tech support. So when you call in to get tech support, you are dealing with Zysel employees. And if it's during business hours here, it is US based employees. If you call in earlier in the morning, for those of you on the East Coast, you may end up talking to some of our sales team in Germany. But again, those are Zysel employees you are dealing with. We do not outsource our tech support to a third party. So if you're here, you're probably a Zysel partner. If you're not, please think about joining our Zysel partner program. It gets you access to priority tech support, deal registration, additional discounts on products automatically applied through distribution, access to our channel sales engineer, things like that. So on to the products. So we're breaking down our products here into a couple different categories: our security appliances, so firewalls, wireless solutions, Wi-Fi, switches. We've got a little bit here as far as hotspot gateways and routers go. Not a lot there. And then network management. So that's going to cover stuff like Nebula, SecuReporter, etc. So we'll start off today by talking about Nebula. So this is probably one of our most popular offerings right now. So the idea behind Nebula is to try to take what normally goes into deploying a new customer network and all the steps involved and reducing those down and eliminating those. So it saves you time, saves you effort, saves you money compared to doing things in the normal way. So Nebula is our cloud managed networking solution. So it puts the full configuration and management of your devices and moves them into the cloud. So some of the stuff here that it does for you is it gives you the ability to set up your products without even needing to unbox it. Once the product arrives, there is a QR code on the outside of the box. Simply scan it with your phone, assign it to your customer, and then ship it on along to them. And you can configure everything in advance before it even gets to the customer's location. Everything is going to be up and running in just a few minutes. We've got a number of wizards that help you set up your customer accounts, set up their sites, and help you configure some of the most common settings that you're going to need to do. The hardware itself reaches out to the cloud directly, so there's no additional hardware or software or anything special you need to do. It will get through most firewalls just fine. So basically, you plug in the device, it will reach out to the cloud. It will find out which site it's been assigned to and automatically download the configuration it needs for that site. It'll also update the firmware if necessary. So again, nothing else is needed. All of this ability is built into the individual switches, access points, routers, etc., out of the box. So there's no, wireless LAN controllers that need to be on premise. There's no cloud keys. There's no virtualized software that needs to be running on a server somewhere. It's all handled through the cloud. So, and because everything's through the cloud, basically anywhere you've got access to a web browser, you have access to your customer's network. So you can keep an eye on what's going on. If an emergency pops up, you'll be able to jump in there immediately, no matter where you happen to be. In addition to the web interface, we also do have a mobile app that's optimized for phones, available for iOS and Android. Nebula includes the ability to provide easy guest access through a captive portal. We've got a lot of flexibility with how this works. You can set it up for them to log in with a username and password. You can simply have them agree to a terms of service page before being granted access. You can have them log in with their Facebook credentials. A lot of flexibility here. So you can use it whether you're providing guest access for vendors who are visiting one of your customers, or whether it's something like a coffee shop or a hotel needing to provide guest access. All updates and configurations are done over the air. So basically, you log into the cloud interface, make your changes, and they will automatically be pushed out in just a couple minutes to the hardware itself. There's no need to directly access any of the devices. And firmware updates can be scheduled, so you can have some flexibility there as to when firmware updates are going to get applied. On the VPN side of things, we've done some stuff here to make VPNs a lot more easy for you. We've got a nice little wizard there, so you can go in if you want to set up a bunch of sites and connect them together. Simply choose the sites, choose what sort of topology you want to use, and we'll handle everything else. For doing remote users, whether they're on a mobile device or they're on a PC, we have the ability to send out a script that'll automatically configure the OS VPN to be able to connect back to the site. So that works with Windows, Mac, and iOS. And Nebula has been designed from the ground up for managing multiple customers and multiple sites under those customers. So all of your customers are in one place. You don't need to, set up VPN tunnels to get access to them. You don't need to keep track of different login credentials for each one. Simply log into nebula.zysel.com and you will have access to all of your customers there. So this is showing here when you log into a customer's site, we give you this nice little dashboard, but you can customize a bit, which lets you know what's going on with the network, how many wireless users are connected, what the PoE usage is versus your PoE budget, where bandwidth is going, both on a user and an application basis. So everything I've talked about when it comes to Nebula is included with the free version of Nebula. So the free version of Nebula has no limitations on the number of sites you can manage or number of customers you can manage or the number of devices you can manage. Now, we do also offer an upgrade through what we call Plus and Pro, additional licenses, which unlock some additional features. But again, everything I've talked about up to this point is included with the free version of Nebula. So when you're looking at our products, you will see two terms being thrown around out there. You will see Nebula Flex and Nebula Flex Pro. So devices called Nebula Flex have dual functionality. You can use them standalone, just like you would any traditional switch or router or access point and configure them directly, or you can choose to manage them in the cloud. And again, it's really easy to switch them from standalone to cloud mode. All you do is scan that QR code, assign it to a site, and within a couple of minutes, the device will detect that you want to manage it in the cloud and will automatically switch over into cloud managed mode. And then if you ever want to take it out of the cloud, you simply reverse the process and it'll automatically go back to standalone mode. You'll also see products called Nebula Flex Pro. So Nebula Flex Pro products, same thing. You can manage them in the cloud or standalone, but they usually include 1 year of our Pro Pack license, which unlocks some additional features. It gives you access to more admin accounts. It gets you access to more logs stored in the cloud, gets you access to some more flexibility on the functionality of the captive portal, gets you access to email alerts and things like that. And on the access point side of things, anything that's Nebula Flex Pro also has a third mode where it can be managed by a controller, such as the controllers that are built into our security products. So if you don't want to use the cloud, but you still want to have a managed wireless LAN, Nebula Flex Pro products do work with our dedicated local controllers. So now we'll move on, talk a little bit here about security. So first up here, our firewall products have now been certified by ICSA Labs for 20 years. So this is an independent lab that goes out there and does testing, sets standards for security firewall products, and tests them to verify we are compliant with all of those settings. So we've been doing it now for 20 years straight. When it comes to UTM services, Unified Threat Management, most of our competitors out there are trying to do everything in-house. They're trying to do content filtering in-house. They're trying to be an antivirus company. They're trying to be an intrusion and threat detection company. So we have a different approach to this. Rather than try to do all of these things and wear all of these hats in-house, we've farmed out a lot of this functionality to some of the biggest names in the industry. So our products are working with McAfee, WebRoot, Lastline, Trend Micro, Bitdefender for signatures and updates to the security services that are bundled with our UTM products. So now we'll talk about some of the core functionality that's available on our security products. Most of the features I'll talk about here are available on most of our security products, regardless of line. So the ability to do VPN high availability, WAN load balancing, support multiple WANs, virtual tunnel interface, so you can trunk VPNs together, the ability to use a secure SSL VPN. So instead of having to install and configure software on the user's device, it's a lightweight, easy way to use just standard SSL encryption to allow them to tunnel back to the office. We support L2TP over IPsec for mobile devices. We have the easy VPN functionality to dramatically reduce what sort of configuration and headaches you can run into with setting up site-to-site VPNs. On the UTM side of things, we offer antivirus, content filtering. We have our layer 7 application intelligence, which allows us to analyze traffic and allows you to easily create rules to manage traffic based on individual applications and functions and behaviors of those individual applications. Geo Enforcer. On the ATP series, we have sandbox and machine learning, and we'll talk, I think, a little bit more about it later. Botnet and malware blockers, intrusion prevention, reputation filter. And then most products also have a built-in wireless LAN controller, which can manage our 5 and 6 series wireless LAN access points, and the ability to do hotspot management as an add-on with a additional license. And lastly, some of the other stuff here, link aggregation groups, high availability for those of you that want to make sure that if one device goes offline for some reason, there's a second device that takes over, SSL packet inspection, and the ability to do radius and Active Directory integration. So I know a lot of stuff and I'm flying through it. Another thing we have here is we are certified to work with AWS and Microsoft Azure to create basically a virtual private cloud. So it allows you to host your applications in the Amazon or Microsoft cloud system. And we are certified to be able to create a secure VPN tunnel between the customer's site and the cloud. So those applications are accessed just like any other application that is hosted locally. So on the security products here, we break them down into 3 categories here. We'll name one of them here simplicity, flexibility, and then the ultimate. So simplicity is our VPN series, flexibility is the USG Flex Series, and then the ultimate is our ATP, the Advanced Threat Protection Series. So we got a little chart there showing you some of the feature differences on them. You'll notice there the VPN series, as the name implies, is really focused on just being a firewall gateway and facilitating VPNs either site to site or remote users back into the office. It provides some content filtering, but doesn't provide any other sort of UTM services. So if you want to go UTM, so that's offloading antivirus, anti-spam, IDP, things like that into the firewall gateway, you will want a USG Flex or an ATP series. And only the ATP series offers sandboxing, IP reputation filter, and the DNS reputation filter. So when looking at most of these different products, there isn't a lot of feature difference between the different models. The difference is primarily going to be the port configuration of the different devices and just how much horsepower they have. So how many users they can support, how much bandwidth they can support. So that's the primary differences between them. The VPN series offers device high availability. It has that built-in wireless LAN controller. It has content filtering, so you can go in there and use categories to block websites you don't want employees to have access to, and all of the sort of business class firewall security policies, things like that you might want. The USG Flex Series, right now, the USG Flex Series is our only series of security appliances that is Nebula Flex. So it can be used standalone, or you can integrate this with the Nebula Cloud and manage your devices using the Nebula Cloud. So these are significantly higher performance than the previous USG series of products that are in the process of being phased out. Again, we've got the wireless LAN controller built in there, device high availability, and this is where you want to go if you want UTM services. And then the ultimate side of things here, this is our ATP series. So again, really high performance when it comes to security, and this has that enhanced UTM functionality with sandboxing. So basically, your traditional, security UTM appliance uses signatures to recognize traffic and decide what is good traffic and what is bad traffic. Unfortunately, there's always going to be a gap between new types of traffic, whether good or bad, and when signatures come along that recognize those. So the ATP solves that sort of gap there between when new traffic arises, new threats arise, and when they are classified and signatures are pushed out by taking that traffic, offloading it into a sandbox in the cloud, and running it through thousands of different iterations and using artificial intelligence to analyze what's going on, to recognize, is this good or is this bad? And then has the ability, once it recognizes what this new type of traffic is, to immediately push it out to other ATPs that have been deployed. So as more and more people buy and deploy ATPs, we're going to be faster and faster at being able to catch new threats as they emerge on the network and push out new signatures to all of the ATPs so they can recognize them much sooner than um, your traditional UTM appliance. So the VPN series also has the ability to be turned into an SD-WAN appliance. So this is a license. You will buy a Zywall VPN. You will buy this license, and it will convert it from a VPN to a SD-WAN gateway. So SD-WAN is software-defined wide area network. Basically, it's been designed as sort of an alternative to MPLS for providing high performance direct connections between different locations. So traditionally, if you were trying to do voice over IP between multiple locations and you need true enterprise, carrier quality voice, you would have to buy these dedicated MPLS lines from your ISP. They were ridiculously expensive. Speed wasn't too great, but there was no drop packets, there was no latency issues, none of those sort of things that you run into when you're trying to do VoIP over the internet. So SD-WAN is basically designed as a way to allow you to use a standard internet connection to provide this sort of carrier class um, quality connection between locations over the public internet over VPN tunnels. So the way this works is basically because we control the gateway at each of the different locations that your customer would have if they want to connect together. We're able to do some tricks and do some optimization that can't be done when using the standard public internet and when you don't control all the endpoints. So we can optimize TCP acceleration, prevent it from dropping down and getting slow. We have the ability to modify paths where the data is taking to be able to optimize latency and reduce latency. Same thing by using multiple paths, we can get around packet loss issues and various other little tips and tricks that make some huge differences when it comes to the quality of the connection over a VPN between multiple locations. So we've got an example here. So in this example, we are trying to transfer a file between our Taiwan office and our German office. It's just a standard Ubuntu ISO, so a freeware Linux distribution there. So over a typical VPN connection, it took us almost 3 hours to send this file. Now we can see here at the bottom of the slide the quality of what the connection was. So it had a 290 millisecond round trip time. So pretty high ping because of the distance. It had 0.3% packet loss, 3 milliseconds of jitter. So you see by implementing and doing the same transfer over a SD-WAN optimized connection, we were able to reduce the transfer time to just 10 minutes. So a significant performance increase. And this allows us to be able to do VoIP between these different locations and have it be just as good, if not better, than an MPLS connection. So the USG Flex products here, I want to take a little bit more time to talk about them. I know I mentioned them a little bit earlier here. So these are what's replacing the USG series. If you're an older partner of ours, you're familiar with. And I just wanted to talk a little bit here what the main differences are between the existing USG and the new USG Flex. And basically a huge performance difference when it comes to UTM performance, up to a 500% increase in performance. Firewall performance is 125% performance increase. And this is now also going in talking about the ATP series. I seem to be missing a slide there. I apologize. So this is talking more about how the ATP series works and how the ATP, the advanced threat protection, works compared to typical UTM. So this is just kind of illustrating what I was talking about earlier. As threats come in, they get checked against signatures. But if something's new, there's a new threat out there, there's a new application that's not a threat, it takes a while for the security companies out there to identify the new type of behavior and figure out what it is. So with the ATP series, it takes these unknown products that it doesn't match any existing signatures, sandboxes them and uploads them to the cloud where we can figure out if they are malicious or good or not. And then, like I said before, it automatically passes this information out to all the additional ATPs that are deployed. So again, as every ATP is part of this cloud network. So, if somebody using an ATP in India discovers a new attack, because that's where it first hits, by the time that attack migrates to the United States, the ATP has the ability to be able to push out and recognize the signatures that are needed to be able to identify that new threat before it gets here. So it's a global ecosystem all tied together using the cloud and artificial intelligence. And the ATP is powered by Last Line. They are one of the industry leaders when it comes to this type of sandboxing and artificial intelligence. Okay, so I'm going to talk now about the software side of things. So one of the big things when it comes to security, and especially when it comes to UTM products, is convincing your customer they need to renew the license when the first year is up, right? So most products come with 1 year out of the box. Once that 1 year is up, you need to convince them, hey, you need to renew these UTM services, and it's always an uphill battle. So SecuReporter is one of the tools you can use to help you with that. Basically, it's a centralized place you can go for all of your customers using our Zywall appliances. And basically, it aggregates all of the data as to what's going on your customers' networks and what the UTM services are doing and generates a number of reports for you that you can then share with your customer to show them, look, here's what our antivirus blocked. Here's the websites your employees went to that our content filtering blocked. Here's what the threats that IDP detected. So it's an integrated solution hosted in the cloud. So the SecuReporter part's hosted in the cloud. So it's taking the log data, the application data, the security data. It is uploading that into the cloud. It's then providing analytics to it, breaking it down, making sure times are organized and synchronized, and generating reports. So these reports, obviously, you can look at to see what's going on in your customers' networks, but we also have the ability to go through here and take these reports and have them sent to your customers so that they can see what's been going on. They can see what these UTM services have been done. They can put your logo on there so they can see and be reminded that you're the one that set this up. You're the one that's managing it for them. And it makes it a lot easier for them when the time comes to be able to go through there and justify the renewal license fees for updating their UTM stuff. And again, just like with Nebula, everything is being handled in the cloud, and it gives you the ability to manage all of your customers through one interface. You simply log in and you have the ability to see all of your customers that are using UTM services in the cloud. And as I mentioned before, we generate reports and we give you the ability to customize these reports, what information is included, and add your branding to those reports. So that's it for security products. Now I'm going to move through here to switches. So switches, we've got way too many products to be talking about individually. Um, so we want to start here by just sort of giving you the rule for how our naming works. So this will help you. So if you're looking through the price sheet or you're at Ingram Micro or Cinex or whatever, and you're looking at their listings, you can figure out quickly by the switch name what's going on with that switch and what sort of features it has. So to begin with, all of our switches start with a text-based prefix here. So if you see ES in the switch name, that tells you that all of the ports are 100 megabit ports. Not a lot of those here in North America, although we still sell a lot of those around the world. GS tells you all of the ports are 1 gig ports. If you see it starts with XS, it's telling you all of the ports on that switch support 10 gigs. If it's XGS, it's telling you that most of the ports are going to be 1 gig, but there are 10 gig uplink ports. And then we also have an MGS series that we don't really sell here in North America, which are switches that are aimed more at the carrier space. And then at the end, when you look at the end of the model, you will see HP or P. So P tells you it's the traditional 802.3, was it AF PoE, and then there's PoE Plus, which provides up to 30 watts of power. And we all also do have switches that could provide up to 60 watts of power per port, and they're still using the HP suffix there. And then if you see the switch name ends in an F, it's telling you all of the ports on that switch are fiber ports. Now, one of the things that also tends to slip people up if they're new to Zysel is on many of our switches, we have these what we call combo ports. So basically you can see here, you've got 8 copper ports on this example switch here. These are all gigabit because this is a GS switch. So this one here though has 2 additional ports on the end. There's 4 physical ports, 2 copper and 2 fiber, but they are tied together. So you have the choice of being able to use either copper or fiber for each of these ports. So 4 physical ports, 2 actual ports when it comes down to utilization. That's just going through here when looking at switches, SFP. These are the little modules you use if you are doing fiber. SFP are 1 gig fiber. SFP plus means they can do up to 10 gigs over the fiber. And then some of our switches do have the ability to do physical stacking, and they do that over what's called a DAC cable, direct attached cable. That's something you can buy from us. And that provides a 10 gig hardwired link between those ports for stacking. And if you're doing something like Nebula, Nebula has virtual stacking built in by default. But if you need actual physical stacking, you need to check and make sure the switches you're buying do support it. So here we are talking about PoE again. So it's 802.3 AF is 15.4. I think I got the name wrong last time. 30 watts is 802.3 AT. And then now we've got PoE++, which is up to 60 watts of power per port. So we've tried to group our different switches together into 4 different categories. Switches that start with 1 for the most part go under effortless. These are our unmanaged switches. Simplicity is the 1200 and 1900 series. These are going to provide a basic web interface and some basic functionality such as VLAN tagging. And then we go up to our flexibility models, which are the 1350, the 1920 and the 1930 series. And then the ultimate high-end true layer 2 switches or layer 3 switches, which are going to be the 2210, 2220, 3700, 3800, 4600. And of these, The top two series here are what can be managed in the cloud, specifically the 1350s, the 1920 V2s, and the 1930s can all be managed with Nebula as part of Nebula Flex. And then the 2220s and 3800 series are Nebula Flex Pro. So they include 1 year of Pro Pack with them. So we'll try to hit here on a few of the different switches. On the lower end managed side of things, we have the 1200 series. We have both a 5 and 8 port version, both of them available with or without PoE. And then we have the XGS series here. So that's telling you get a bunch of gigabit ports and then you get some 10 gig uplinks. So this is going to be the most affordable way to do 10 gig uplink fiber. Jumping up from there, we have the 1900 series. So the 1900 series has some more switches that are designed to be rack mountable. And they also unlock a lot more features than what are available in the 1200 series. And then going up to the 1920s, this is going to be our most powerful switches that are web managed, that don't have a command line interface to them. So this is one of our most popular series. The new V2s, I'm saying new, but they've been out for well over a year, can be managed with Nebula if you so choose. Most of these switches do have fiber uplink ports on them. Ultra quiet fan if they do have a fan. Some of the low end models have no fan at all. Then going up to the 1930 series, these will get you 10 gig fiber ports. That's the primary difference between these and the 1920s is the 10 gig fiber uplinks. The XS 1930s, these are going to be all 10 gig ports on this model versus the XGS 1930s. And then we've got our 2220s. These are our true layer 2 plus switches. These have a command line interface. These can be managed directly with their built-in web interface, or these can be managed with Nebula Flex Pro. And then going up from there, we have the 2210 series, which is in the process, and the NWS 200. These are all being phased out in place of the 2220s. Here's our XGS 3700 series. So this gets us up to layer 3 light functionality. So if you need to do static routing, policy-based routing, these are the switches you would go up to. 3800 series are all 10 gig ports. So these are something you would use back in the main office here as your central switches. And then the 4600 series also layer 3 switch. So on the PoE side of things, most switches, I think everything 1900 and up supports our intelligent PoE. So PoE by default, per the standard, each device identifies what class of product it is, and that determines from the switch how much power that the switch needs to reserve for each plugged in device. The problem you run into here is some of these different classes are huge jumps, right? So the jump between class 3 and class 4 is 15 watts of power. So that's a huge amount of power when it comes to doing budget, especially when a lot of your products are only using 16 or 17 watts of that 30 watts that they are required to ask for by the PoE standard. So if you enable this ability here, we have the ability to monitor the device, see how much power each device is actually drawing, and then apply and assign the power based on the real world demand that those products have. So we've got an example here with a VoIP phone. You can see here by classification, it's a class 3 device, so it's requesting 15.4 watts be reserved for it. However, it's only actually using 9 watts of power. So the ability to use 24 phones using our class ability or using our consumption mode here only uses 216 watts of power. Whereas if you use the official standard way of doing things, it would require 370 watts of power. Similar thing here when doing PoE on some IP cameras. So again, by class, they're requiring 30 watts of power, but realistically, they only need 16 watts of power. So it's a power budget difference of 320 watts versus 600 watts. as far as what you would need to be able to power these 20 IP cameras. Next up here, um, are our 1350 series switches. So I broke these out. I know we've gone through all of them, really high level. I broke these out because is there a different type of switch that you may not be familiar with? These are switches that were specifically designed for the IP security realm for doing like IP cameras. However, they don't have to be used for that. And some of these features are kind of cool. So I wanted to break them out and go through them a little bit more in depth. So again, designed to be PoE surveillance switches, don't have to be. So first cool thing they can do is traditionally when it comes to PoE switches, you're limited to 100 meters, 300 feet runs of cable. So we have the ability to actually do runs up to 250 meters. Now we do this by dropping the speed. We'll drop the speed from to a 10 megabit connection, which should still be plenty enough for most IP cameras and most connected devices, but it will work with any type of device. There's nothing special that needs to be done on the end connected device to be able to use this mode. So it lets you get and run, again, cables more than double what you normally could be able to support using standard Ethernet. We also provide continuous PoE power. So even if the switch needs to reboot for whatever reason, PoE power is maintained to the connected device. So the connected device doesn't reboot and you know keep off the network longer than it needs to. We have the ability to be able to detect the connected device and show you what is connected, what's going on with it, which IP address is associated with the connected device. And we give you the ability through the GUI there to be able to power cycle the device if you need to reset it. We also have the ability to automate this. So we can use either LLDP in the case of standard IP cameras, or using just regular ping for any other type of connected device. And we can set up rules here so we can ping the device to make sure it's still responding on the network. And if it stops responding, we can automatically power cycle it. So there's a number of settings here. How many pings do you want it to fail? And then how long do you want to wait after power cycling the device before you resume testing that device again to see if it's online? And we've beefed up the surge protection on these versus the other switches. And then we do have some accessories here when it comes to the switches. So the main category we have on here is going to be SFP and SFP plus modules for doing fiber runs. And then we've also got those direct attached DAC cables if you're going to be doing physical stacking. So Paul here, I'll go ahead and answer Paul's question. Paul was asking what the big differences are with the carrier switch. I'm not that familiar with them, but I know most of them are designed to be sort of heavy duty when it comes to environmental conditions. So they can be, mounted in a neighborhood. I forget what you call those metal boxes the utility companies use to load equipment into. But that's the main thing I'm currently aware of. Like I said, we don't really sell these in the U.S. Maybe one or two models. That's the main thing I'm aware of. Is just other than the port configurations, them being designed to be a little bit more ruggedized. So now we'll move on to wireless. One of the categories I actually know about. Yay. So these days we're breaking up our business class wireless access points into two main categories. The flexibility category, this includes all of our APs that start with the number 1 or the number 2, or our ultimate series, which are the APs that start with the number 5 and the number 6. The initial main difference between these is the flexibility series are Nebula Flex. The ultimate series are Nebula Flex Pro. So the Flex Pros can be managed by a local controller or Nebula or directly. And if you are using Nebula, they include 1 year of ProPack licensing out of the box. Now, whether you are looking at our $90 NWA 1123 ACV3 or you are looking at our heavy duty WAC 650S, this design philosophy illustrated here is applied across all of our APs. So if you ever see us at a trade show, We are starting to do those again. One of the things we like to bring is we like to bring some of our APs, and we like to bring some of the competition's APs, Ubiquiti, Ruckus, and so you can open them up and look and see these differences between how we build our product, how they build their product. And even without opening them up, just holding them, you can feel the difference in weight. So because these are solid state devices, one of the things all of our APs follow is there are no electrolytic capacitors which can fail. Instead, we use only solid state capacitors. So there's no risk of leaks, of boils over, of the capacitors drying out. The other big cause of failure in access points is heat fatigue over time. So to help prevent that, all of our APs have quite a bit of venting on the access point housing itself. Um, but we also have a large metal shield that goes behind the PCBA, which is designed to draw heat off the board and push it out through those vents to keep the board itself from heating up. And then from a performance point of view, you will notice we use a lot more EMI shielding on the board than most of our competitors do. We also do not mount our antennas directly onto the PCBA like just about everybody else does. So instead, we move them to their own board and put a sort of a diffuser shield, another metal shield here, between the PCBA and the antennas to create even greater isolation to help with receive sensitivity and wireless LAN performance. We've also got some technologies that you may not be too familiar with. So most access points that you're going to buy are designed to be mounted on a ceiling over the area that needs to be covered. And they radiate out a sort of circular coverage pattern from where that access point is located, which is great if you're mounting your access point on a ceiling directly over where you need to provide coverage. Unfortunately, in the real world, there are times when you cannot do that and you end up having to mount your access point on a wall. So that's really inefficient as far as how the coverage is, because now the antenna pattern is sending a lot of the signal up into the ceiling and down into the floor. And if you're in a multi-floor building, it can cause all sorts of interference issues between the floors and the access points. So our solution to this is something that we call dual optimized antenna. So for those APs that offer dual optimized antenna, there are two different sets of antennas inside the access point. One that's optimized for mounting on the ceiling, one that's optimized for mounting on the wall. And we give you the ability to switch between those based on where each AP has been installed. We also have a technology here called smart antenna. So first off, smart antenna is not beamforming, and this has caused some confusion because of the way beamforming was originally advertised when it came around with 11AC Wave 2. So just to make clear, smart antenna is not beamforming. It is something in addition to beamforming that requires specific hardware, specifically a smart antenna. So besides us, Ruckus is probably the most well-known name of vendor that pushes smart antenna technology. And smart antenna technology basically is designed to maximize the quality of the wireless connection. So one of the problems that's always plagued Wi-Fi is something called co-channel interference. And I'll go more in depth in this when we do our Wi-Fi webinars and the Wi-Fi 101 webinar. But basically the short version of it is you've got a limited amount of radio spectrum that can be used by unlicensed devices such as wireless access points, cordless mice, things like that, as well as industrial equipment, microwaves, things like that. So in the real world, basically, the devices are each supposed to take turns using that spectrum. And if multiple devices use the spectrum at the same time, it causes interference, packet loss, things like that. So this is just showing here, this is your traditional antenna pattern for a ceiling mount antenna. If you're doing a panel antenna that's doing point to point, you normally get something more like this. With smart antenna, we changed that up a little bit. So in this example, we're using a traditional ceiling mount antenna. And in this case, interference is being caused by a microwave, but it could be another access point, it could be a wireless camera, it could be an air conditioner. So when that gets turned on and used, it can cause interference and cause quality drops in the wireless network. With smart antenna, we have the ability, instead of using that round antenna pattern I showed you earlier as a standard antenna, we have the ability in real time to change the antenna pattern for each individual client to optimize it. So when smart antenna first came out, there was a lot of focus here on focusing the beam of the radio signal to the to the client device to maximize signal strength and focus as much power as possible towards the Wi-Fi client, which is great. One of the things we did differently is we really focused not only on that, but also on changing the antenna pattern to ignore where other sources of interference may come from. So to use smart antenna, you just need the smart antenna in the AP. It doesn't require anything special on the client side, so it'll work with any sort of, tablet or barcode scanner or whatever you happen to be using. Nothing special needs to be done to be able to support this. So this is an example here where we compared ourselves with an Aruba AP515. So this is our Wi-Fi 6 AP with an equivalent Wi-Fi 6 AP from HP Aruba, which doesn't have smart antenna. And you see significant performance increase in those green lines versus the blue lines from the Aruba there. Now, a few years ago, there was a university in Italy, University of Brescia, in their computer science department, their networking group went out and tried to test claims made by us and Ruckus about the benefits of smart antenna technology. So if you want to see it, I believe this link is still good down here at the bottom. That is their full analysis, the full details on exactly what they tested, how they tested, all of the results. You can go see that. Or you can just Google Zysel smart antenna, and it should take you to a white paper we put together where we highlight some of the key takeaways from their analysis. But the short version was smart antenna outperforms non-smart antenna pretty significantly, especially in real world environments. So in a lab where you're in a clean room environment with one AP on, there's a minor benefit. But if you go out into the real world where there's all sorts of other sources of RF interference, significant performance benefits of smart antenna technology. And in their testing, our smart antenna implementation and algorithm outperformed Ruckus pretty significantly as well in those real world tests. And we have launched our Wi-Fi 6 products. So Wi-Fi 6 is pretty exciting because if you've ever sat through my Wi-Fi 101 presentation, Wi-Fi is based on a really, really old set of rules, a standard that was passed originally back in, I think, 1999. And because of that, there's been all these problems that have plagued Wi-Fi for a number of years. So Wi-Fi 6 is really a significant upgrade that's been designed to sort of solve some of these issues that have been plaguing Wi-Fi for a long time, particularly when it comes to capacity and the ability to support things like voice and things like that. Wi-Fi 6, also known as 11AX, is the first Wi-Fi standard that applies to both the 5 and the 2.4 radio since 11N. So any of your 11AC equipment you have today, that 2.4 radio is still using the even older 11N technology on it. So with Wi-Fi 6, you now have the ability to have all these improvements that were in 11AC and now in 11AX on the 2.4 radio. Now, you do have to be careful, though. For instance, Ubiquiti on their access points, they are only putting Wi-Fi 6 on the 5 gigahertz radio. They are not they have not put Wi-Fi 6 on the 2.4 as a cost-cutting measure. So that's something to keep in mind. Is that not all products operating as Wi-Fi 6 have the full set of features here. So this is talking about some of the other things here. So we've now got the ability to do MU-MIMO both downstream from the AP, but now we've added the ability to do it upstream from the client. So now multiple clients can transmit to your access point simultaneously without interfering with each other. They've added OFDMA in both directions. Again, this allows better utilization of the available airtime. So you can customize when you've got multiple clients transmitting at the same time, you can customize how much bandwidth is available to each one based on their capabilities and demands. Something called resource unit scheduling. We've increased the modulation rates. We've got this cool technology called BSS coloring, which allows us to kind of to tag the frames as to who they're intended for. to make it easier for access points and clients to know what these should be paying attention to, what these shouldn't be paying attention to. And it allows you to crowd more APs into the same area before you start getting interference, even without smart antenna technology, and something called targeted wake up time. Now, again, this is important. These are some of the key features that make Wi-Fi 6 Wi-Fi 6. However, some other vendors out there are selling products that are really what we would call pre-Wi-Fi 6. They're using older chipsets, which don't support some of these key features that are part of the Wi-Fi 6 standard. So because of that, they can't get themselves Wi-Fi certified Wi-Fi 6, but they can still call their products Wi-Fi 6. And unless you're looking for these features in the data sheet, you may not know that they are missing and are not truly Wi-Fi 6. And this applies to a lot of the ingenious Wi-Fi 6 APs and to the new Netgear Wi-Fi 6 APs, which are actually just rebranded ingenious APs. So it's something to keep in mind. When it comes to Zysel, all of our products that are advertised as Wi-Fi 6 have Wi-Fi 6 on both the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz radio. And we support all of the key features that are required for Wi-Fi 6 full performance. So I want to talk here for those of you that are deploying a bunch of APs. Obviously, you don't want to manage those directly. And if our preferred solution is that you should manage those with the Nebula Cloud. But for those of you that don't want to use cloud management for whatever reason, the 5 and 6 series access points can work with our Zywall's built-in wireless LAN controllers to provide managed Wi-Fi. So we have the ability when you're doing this to do intelligent channel selection and the ability to change those channels over time as the RF environment changes. When using our wireless LAN controllers, there's no configuration that needs to be done on the APs. If you haven't enabled a controller on your network, the APs will automatically find that controller and put themselves into controller mode. Just like with Nebula, we have the ability to create a wireless mesh. So not all of your APs need a physical Ethernet connection. They can create a mesh to get back to a physical Ethernet connection in those situations. Fast roaming using 802.11r, K, and V. Really big if you're doing voice over Wi-Fi. Rogue AP detection and isolation, although I will warn you that the isolation feature may get you in trouble with the FCC in the US. We have the ability to do 802.1x authentication of the users and the ability to create a tunnel between the AP back to the security gateway. So traffic has to go through the security gateway before it can hit your LAN. The ability to do dynamic VLANs where each user is automatically assigned their VLANs based on their user credentials, load balancing, etc. So here's a little chart showing you here all of our popular security appliances. And this is showing you here what the default number of managed APs is out of the box. You'll notice on the ATP series, there's two sets of numbers, and that just has to do with whether it's stock or whether you've got the gold pack license activated or not. And then you can upgrade all of these with one-time licenses to add additional AP support. So that is it today, guys, for today's presentation. I know we went through a lot. I know I went through a lot of it fast. If there's more you would like to learn, check out our YouTube channel. All of the webinars that Try and myself do, and I think Marcus is as well, most of those will get published and are recorded and then published to our YouTube. So if there's something you'd like to dwell a little bit more on, check our YouTube. There's a good chance we've already got a webinar there for you where we've delved into more depth on some of these products. But if you have questions, send them in with the question and answer interface there in the Zoom, and I will do my best to answer them for you. We do also have our LinkedIn. And then lastly here, we do have user forums available at forum.zysel.com. These forums are actually monitored by our R&D and our HQ support team. So it's a good place to go not only to talk to other users and get help with things, but to know that occasionally they will drop in and answer questions there themselves. They're also checking out and seeing the feedback that you guys provide. So it's a great way by posting your suggestions, your ideas, your thoughts on our products to get them to be able to see that directly. And then my email is up there on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me offline. One thing we're always looking for and asking you guys for is your suggestions on webinars you'd like to see us put together. what sort of webinars would be of value to you and your employees. Do you want to more in depth on certain features? Do you want, application guides? How do we configure things? Email me, email your salesperson, let them know what sort of topics you are looking for, because we need those suggestions, so we know what to spend time putting together for you. So Paul is asking, do many of the client devices, PCs, Macs, phones, et cetera, support Wi-Fi 6 yet? Um, yes, a lot of them do. A lot of your flagship, phones these days will support Wi-Fi 6. Some of your flagship, tablets and things like that. Um, most I think mid-tier and higher laptops will have Wi-Fi 6 support built in. It may not be the fastest level of Wi-Fi 6, but they all should support some of those Wi-Fi 6 features. And as time goes on, it's just going to be, more and more devices. Essentially, at some point here, Wi-Fi 6 will take over as the primary standard. The biggest area where we run into perhaps you'd call resistance is going to be on, smart home devices. The cheap little $10 Wi-Fi enabled power outlets and things like that. Um, Having said that, Wi-Fi 6 has a number of technologies which leads towards energy saving. So hopefully maybe that will, encourage them to move, because I know a lot of those devices are still operating on really old like G technology and N technology. So hopefully it'll be enough to get them to move there. But yeah, anything mid-tier is probably going to have Wi-Fi 6 now. But guess most as far as laptops and computers go, and I would guess that most mid-tier phones will start to have that this year. Anything new, mid-tier and higher, I'm going to guess is going to have Wi-Fi 6 built in, just because it comes bundled with the CPU chip that they're using. All right, Paul's also asking about a webinar on SD-WAN. I know we used to have some of those, so you may check out YouTube to see if there's any there. But Try or Marcus is your guy on that, not me. I'm not too familiar with it from a practical standpoint. But yeah, reach out to your salesperson, whoever that happens to be, Jacob, Andy, David, and let them know you'd like to learn more on SD-WAN, and they can try to arrange that for you with either Marcus or Try. I'm not sure which of the two would be the one to do it. So that, guys, concludes today's webinar. Again, thank you for joining us. Feel free to reach out to me offline or just reach out to your salesperson and they can convey anything that needs to be passed on to me. But thanks for joining us, guys. I really appreciate it.